It's time to lock in. We're talking SEC, college football, and more. This is AP as we see it.
I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I'm all about that action. I said I'm all about that action.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham from LA, Lower Alabama. This is AP As We See It, a weekly syndicated show discussing the Southeastern Conference, college football, and other sports. And when we talk about other sports right now, during this transfer portal era, it started the 10-day spring window. And just one clarification for the SEC, you cannot transfer within the conference. You have to go outside the SEC at this time. You can only transfer within the conference during the winter transfer portal window. But anyway, we'd like to welcome you to AP As We See It. And we'd like to mention you can check us out every week on our social media platforms, AP As We See It on our YouTube channel, and also on our Facebook, Instagram account, and X account. And we also archive everything on Spotify, AP As We See It. We like to think that it's been a lot of fun doing these videos on YouTube, and you can also find all our interviews when we cover the Final Four, the Super Bowl, and upcoming next week will be the draft in Green Bay, Wisconsin, the 2025 NFL draft. So you can check out all those interviews as well on our social media platform. We have links. We have the video on our YouTube channel at AP Stedham, and also you can check out my personal pages as well at AP Stedham. Sometime we move and groove over there as well. We'd like to tell you about our guest this week. It's going to be Craig Bohl, the Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association. We're going to discuss some of the legislation that they're proposing to Congress to try to get things solved in this wild, wild west. We've always designated that as this era of college athletics, the wild, wild west, and it's not tame right now. It's far from having the parameters that are necessary for everyone to feel comfortable and good about the situation. So that scenario is the wild, wild west. We'd like to thank our sponsors that support us every week. Greer's Markets, 29 locations, Alabama, Florida, Mississippi. They have Lucy's Recipes. They have the coloring contest for the children. They have the groceries to go, which will deliver to your home, your office, your venue, any location you desire. Just click on there and you can check out all the delicious food and produce and treats and desserts and everything located at Greer's. We also, Greer's is, like I said, in 29 locations, 3 different states, Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, and the coloring contest. And remember, Lucy's got her book out. Lucy's Recipes are there as well. And remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it. We'd also like to thank the Cortland Grand Hotel in Atlanta, Georgia. And that's a place where I stay regularly when I'm in the city of ATL, Atlanta, Georgia. Spacious rooms. They have an indoor swimming pool that makes you feel like you're in some tropical location. They have the workout room that's right in the heart of Atlanta. Great rates and comfort and outstanding accommodations right there downtown. So remember to check that out, the downtown Atlanta area, the Cortland Grand Hotel. So I guess we're going to be getting on some of our topics as well. I just want to let you know we'll be discussing the transfer portal, the NIL. We mentioned that 10-day window beginning April 16th. We're going to discuss the college football playoff, 26 locations for the 25 season. We're going to discuss the passing of a friend of ours, a friend of the show, Bill Brother Oliver, the defensive genius and wizard, graduate of University of Alabama, helped them to many championships and other teams as well. And then we're going to mention a book that we received from our friend, a friend of the show as well, Sonny Vaccaro. He's a genius of marketing, and he's really the genesis that we're discussing all this NIL image, name, image, and likeness. He was the one who spearheaded some of the court cases that allowed players to be paid, but we want to pay tribute to Sonny Vaccaro and mention his book. We'll show that copy here in a little while, but let's get down to it now. I think we're going to mention the college football playoff, the locations for the upcoming season. And because it's never too late to get started in making reservations for your hotels and travel with the college football playoffs for the 2025 season, which begin December. The first game will be December 19th. That'll be one game on that day. That's the first round. And the other three games will be on December 20th. That's on Saturday. And that's at the site of the higher ranked team. And so that's December 19th and 20th, the college football playoffs. And then the quarterfinals, Wednesday, the 31st of December, that will be played at the Cotton Bowl in Texas. On Thursday, you'll have three games. January 1st, the Orange Bowl, the Rose Bowl, Orange Bowl in Florida, of course, the Rose Bowl in California, and the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Those will be played January 1st, three games, December 31st, one game, the Cotton Bowl. Then we have the semifinals. The semifinals this year will be in the Fiesta Bowl, January 8th, and January 9th, the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. So that's the Fiesta Bowl in Arizona, January 8th. January 9th is the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. Then we have the College Football Playoff National Championship game will be January 19th, and that's at the Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens in Florida. So the Orange Bowl is really double hosting this year. And that happens. They're double hosting the championship game January 19th, South Florida, Hard Rock Stadium, Miami Gardens, Florida. So that's the playoff schedule this year for the 2025 season, which dovetails into January, of course. And we want to make mention that January of 2027, the championship game of that year will be played in Las Vegas at Allegiant Stadium. So you have those venues in South Florida this year, the championship, moving out to Las Vegas in 2027. So I always try to make my plans way in advance and try to find out the most appropriate place for me to stay near them. It's either at the media hotel or near the media hotel, but we'd like to get our flights arranged in time so we can take advantage of those lower prices. But it's never too late. So that's why we wanted to make that announcement to you today about the college football playoff locations. And I love the fact that some of these teams play each other for the very first time. And the fans from that school, which I've always enjoyed attending and covering places I've never been across this country of ours. So that's one of the beauties of college athletics. You get a chance to travel and visit places that you've never been, if you've dreamed of traveling. So college football playoffs, that's something new with the 12 teams. And we know that they're going to be having discussions later next week. I think it's in Texas about the playoff format. We know that in 2025, at this moment, it's 12 teams. Moving into 2026, after that season, they're looking to expand possibly to 14 or 16. We just don't know yet what is going to be ironed out amongst all the conferences. We know that the Southeastern Conference and the Big Ten have the authority, but they still have to work in conjunction with these other conferences to negotiate the deal with how many teams. We know the Big Ten and the SEC will probably end up having the 4 automatic qualifying teams. That's 8 teams right there if you're moving to 14 or 16. We also, right now, we'd like to discuss our friend who passed away, Bill Oliver, Coach Bill Oliver, Bill Brother Oliver. He's a graduate of the University of Alabama. He was the defensive coordinator for some championships with Coach Bryant of Alabama. He was a genius, and he was someone that people sought his counsel for years about playing defense. And when we say passing, we say that pun intended, because Coach Oliver, he was brilliant, not only with stopping the run, but having his teams intercept these great quarterbacks and really shutting down and negating the air attacks by all these great college quarterbacks. And we saw them particularly, the last one I recall was the championship game in Miami where he shut down Heisman Trophy winner Gino Torretta. He brought up 11 people to the line of scrimmage, and Gino Torretta, he was befuddled and had to call timeout. He didn't know what to do with 11 people on the line of scrimmage, and he ended up having a very difficult night. They shut out Miami, and Miami had a punt return for a touchdown and 2 field goals for the total of 14 points, and Alabama dominated that day on the ground, rushing the ball, minimum yardage, throwing the ball, 34-14. They won the national championship. for the 1992 season. And that defense was one of the best I've seen in college football. They had speed, they had Copeland and Curry and Antonio Langham and George Teague and Antonio London. And they were just terrific. And but the orchestrator of that defense was brother Bill Oliver, and he was a friend of the show. His wife and Coach Oliver, they were very gracious, always very gracious to me and kind. And we filmed the Wishbone Boys. He's in our film, The Wishbone Boys, because he had to defend that wishbone in practice against Coach Bryant's teams in the 70s and the early 80s. But Coach Oliver, we just wanted to pay tribute to him. He was a special person in our life. He was a special person in college football. He's in the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, and he made his bones as a defensive coordinator. Although he was the head coach at UT Chattanooga, he was a defensive coordinator for the Memphis Showboats in the day. Reggie White was one of his players on that team. He coached at Auburn as an assistant under Strick Jordan and Terry Bowden as well, and he was an interim coach there. But he did a lot of good for many people, and he was also at Clemson. And they always, wherever he was, you know that team was playing exceptional defense, and people sought his counsel and advice across this country. But we want to send our best to the Oliver family. Coach Bill, brother Oliver, one of the best in the business for many, many decades. And we'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it, and our guest, Craig Bohl, Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greer's.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and we have a very, very special guest, the Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association, Craig Bohl, former University of Wyoming head coach, University of Nebraska graduate, was on the staff with Tom Osborne. We welcome him to AP as we see it. Hey, Craig, how are you?
Doing really well. I appreciate your coverage of college athletics and specifically college football.
Hey, Craig, I want to ask you so people will know the mission and the goals of the American Football Coaches Association so they'll understand you.
You bet. Well, we've got a membership of about 11,000, and it covers, there's 776 college football programs out there. Members also include the National Football League. We've got a pretty robust high school grouping and some junior colleges. And so a wide swath, we're here to promote the game of football, educate, encourage. Certainly the AFCA basically is speaking on behalf of the collective will of college football coaches. And in today's world with the challenges we've had, we've probably never been more at a point. We're in some choppy water, AP, but I'm convinced with the right stakeholders at the table, we can make a difference.
Yeah, you had the House Judiciary Committee roundtable in Madison, Wisconsin. And Craig, why did they choose Madison, Wisconsin? Was it arbitrary or just what was the reason?
No, I wouldn't say it's arbitrary. I would say the chairman of the subcommittee is from Wisconsin. And what they'll do occasionally is take a hearing or a roundtable and move it out of DC to change the venue up. Quite frankly, some members of Congress enjoy going different places. It was somewhat enjoyable for me beyond having a chance to express our viewpoints as college coaches. But I had coached at the University of Wisconsin many years ago in the late 80s. And so it was great to come back and see Camp Randall and some of the other people that were there.
It's a great venue. I'll be headed there to the draft coming up soon, Green Bay, actually. But one of the points you wanted to bring out, the 3 points you emphasized in your press release, was the agent regulation. And a lot of people, college athletics now is really professional in my mind anyway. And I think in some of the people's minds, and people have representation, but there's no legislation as far as the capping of the percentage of the deals. So can you explain that to folks?
Yeah, you know what? I I just recently retired from Wyoming, and it's truly the West, and we're speaking in the Wild West.
Right.
I
Yeah.
appreciate, yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, comparing it to professional athletics. Certainly, compensation is important as coaches. We're all for that, uh, but we would like to do everything we can to maintain the academic model. What has become acutely apparent to our coaches across the country is their frustration on working with agreements or contractual agreements with players and the university itself. And so you're dealing with representing the collectives, and you have agents who pose as agents, but really there's no certification, there's no qualification. Many times the agreements are not worth the paper they're written on. There's a lack of clarity. There's certainly not transparency. And so what we're proposing as the AFCA, since we're representing coaches, is that congressional action to at least give us some guide points on registering these agents, making sure there's certain certification qualifications that they have, a clearinghouse that is established, some real enforcement if tampering goes on, and which means a enforcement arm that has real teeth in it, which I think is going to be required. I think to have states try to do this, we have seen a patchwork quilt right now across the
Yes.
country on how NIL is, whether it's should be state income tax exempted or not. And you have different states have no NIL regulations, other ones do. And so we're really convinced that it needs to be a national regulation with uniformity all across the country. And so we've been back. We've received really encouraging bipartisan appetite along with the House and the Senate. And I was just at the White House visiting with some of President Trump's aides on, what our position is as coaches. And so the registering agents, contractual obligations that have clarity, and then some real enforcement, a three-prong approach that we feel like would really help give college football some more stability.
When you say register, Craig, who would be the body that they would register?
Right. That's $1 million questions. Where the clearinghouse would go, where the registration fee would be, whether it's a government entity. I know many members of Congress are like, we've got enough stuff right now on our
Right.
plate. Whether there's an entity outside of that, the registration and the library of that in today's world with technology, I don't really think would be that cumbersome. The real cumbersome part is the enforcement arm. That's where we're going to need some congressional help. But really, the contract should be pretty much standard. It's no different than maybe most of the contracts when you're buying a house or something like that are very standard. I know the National Football League has been very helpful for us, lending their ideas and their support. So I think those are the things that the where all that's housed, I don't think is going to be as complex as actually who's going to enforce, the contracts, and then along with that, who's going to come up with qualifications on what you need to be an agent. We're crafting some ideas and some potential bills where agents would need to have credentials of either a certified financial person, or there's some legal backgrounds. The NFL has really got some great ideas, a 4-year degree, law degrees, things of this nature, and then a nominal fee to where agents will need to go ahead and pay every year.
Right. Pass it. Yeah. Pass the test. I know the NFL, the agents, you can only take it at certain times of the year, and then you have to, you can hold that for, I think, 3 years, I believe it is. And you must have a client by the end of that third year, something like that. There's a minimum requirement.
Well, one of the things that's starkly different, AP, is the NFL has a ceiling of 3% is what an agent can garner off a contract. In our Wild West world, it has gone from 10 to 20%. I even saw a contractual agreement where the fee was 30%. And so this is where the abuse comes into place. And this is why I think people up on Capitol Hill are looking at this going, young people are being exploited, and it can be fixed, and it should be fixed.
Mhm. Craig, have you seen anybody around the country who has some things that you like to divulge to your committee? I mean, maybe there's some contracts that you've seen through some universities, or some requirements, or things that you've picked up from colleges and universities, because everybody has a different idea about the NIL.
Right. Well, you know what? The true concept of NIL, there's some real merit to that, and that had been bantered around actually when I was on the football oversight committee on, what is why should a student athlete not be able to go up to, say, like a car dealership in town and do a public appearance and sign autographs, no different than maybe what the coach does. Or if the player's jersey is being sold in the sporting goods store, he should be able to garner some of that revenue. That's the true picture of NIL. And then what occurred was just this cottage industry of collectives. And so we really rolled out this plan with now a very limited amount of foresight or thought. And so what you've seen is, examples of tampering. We have windows where players should and be able to go on the open market to secure their best financial package. But you've just seen overtures of agents being in touch with players during the course of their season, even during the postseason play, to where a young person feels compelled to where they must come out and make a decision. And so those deals many times are done in back rooms when they shouldn't even be negotiating. And so these are the things that we really need to get cleared up. Or, say like, a couple of players who have signed contracts with certain schools, and then in the middle of the year, they want to go someplace else.
Right.
And these are the things that make things really problematic for coaches. We all believe that players should deserve compensation. College football has never been more popular than it has, but there also needs to be some guardrails for roster stability and a commitment within a team for a certain amount of time, whatever that agreement says.
Craig, we're going to come back here in a few minutes. We've really enjoyed this discussion. We're with Craig Bohl, the Executive Director of American Football Coaches Association. We'll be right back after these messages with AP as we see it.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and our guest is the Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association, Craig Bohl. Craig, we were discussing the collectives, and I was going to ask you, is the American Football Coaches Association, are they in favor of collectives?
Here's what we're in favor of. We're in favor of fair compensation for our players. The rollout of collective was never really intended. What is, we believe, coming out with more clarity of the House settlement is that universities in the Power 4 League will be able to go ahead and access up to $20.5 million of revenue split amongst the department. So each institution, say like in Alabama, whether it be Auburn or Alabama or South Alabama or Troy or Jack State, those Power 4 schools can go up to 20.5. Now you can take 80% of it and allocate it towards football, or less or more than that. And those are going to be direct payments from the institution to the player. Unlike the collective, where the collective was a group of people that had contributed to a fund, and those funds were dispersed. The challenge was there was no accountability to those funds. There was no transparency on how those contracts would work, what would entail a player on a obligation to perform. What about a school paying? You saw all kinds of lawsuits, and you saw, just some horror stories. And what we're saying is as opposed to a collective dispersing the funds, the institution now is going to be in position to disperse those funds. The NIL will go back to its real true form, and it will be regulated by Deloitte, to where if you secure more than a $600 contractual agreement, those monies in that contractual agreement need to be reported to Deloitte, to where there is transparency there. So we're saying that the rev share, that should replace the collectives. It should be housed under the institution. There will be transparency in the clearinghouse on where those funds and how much those funds are going to be dispersed and whom to. And then, the ability for a player to go on the open market as far as securing what he would say is the fair compensation for name, image, and likeness. And like I said, that's either for appearances or photo ops or whomever.
Right. Were those contracts just like a coach's contract? If you're at a state university, are those open to viewing by the media or anybody?
Yeah, that's what we're saying right now. We're saying there needs to be transparency with those contracts, and because right now there is none, and so you're seeing, abuse going both ways of players and agents being less than honest, and unfortunately, a couple schools maybe being less than honest. And we just want to know, put all the cards on the table, where the funds are coming from, when the funds are going to be paid, what does the standard operating contract look like?
Yeah, it's very difficult to negotiate if a player XYZ comes to a coach and tells him, my deal is for $2 million, let's say. And if I'm the head coach, I'm saying, would you mind if we can verify that before we make our offer? But I would say that's not the agent or the representative is not too forthcoming, I believe.
That horse left the barn, and that's an understatement, AP. I'm an old Western guy. This is where I think I'm convinced, AP, I'm convinced that we can come out of this whole enterprise of college athletics and still have, a strong sense of the educational model.
Yes.
We can come out of this model with fair compensation for players, but the right stakeholders need to be at the table. And I'm not saying that head coaches deserve a seat at the head of the table, but we daggone sure need a seat at the table for our voices being heard, because we're the practitioners. We're the one that's living this 24/7.
Right. I would say the enforcement, that's critical, and that's always more difficult, would you say, of the three elements that you presented to the committee?
Without question. And that's some of the challenges that we've had. I have some dear friends that work in the NCAA enforcement, and they're trying to do right, but the cumbersome issue as far as clarity, coming up with timely, accurate information to lend themselves to a judicial decision. Many times the process is too long and drawn out.
Absolutely.
By that time, sometimes the coach is gone or the player's gone, and everybody says, why should the players at that school now be penalized because of past sins of a coach or some players? So it needs to be more flexible, more prompt, and more accurate, with true teeth of subpoena power. I mean, the facts are you've got to be able to put a tape recorder in front of somebody, whomever they might be, and say, hey, we want the truth. And under potential perjury, you better be speaking the truth and don't try to dodge some questions. And so this is where I think we can find ourselves in a better place.
Expeditious and some transparency, as you mentioned. Who are some of the key figures in Congress and the House and the Senate that really you're relying on, Craig?
Right. Well, there's a couple different committees that this falls under. Senator Cruz heads a committee over on the Senate side. I appeared in front of the Judicial Committee. Jim Jordan was chairing that. And I also think that there was Commerce, Judicial, and then there's doggone it, one other name, and I should know it because I was in DC when that hearing was going on too, as well.
Is it health and education? Maybe I don't know.
Yes,
I don't
yeah,
know.
that's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Craig, what is your optimism about this legislation being enacted? And I just say for the record, I think you might agree with this. Most people are trying to stay away from Washington, D.C. It seems that colleges and universities, they're flocking to D.C. because they feel the courts, they can't navigate through the courts when they try to come up with some legislation.
Yeah, you know what? And there's blood on our hands. And like I said, I served on the NCAA Football Oversight Committee. I think we could have had some better decisions 8 years ago when this was beginning to roll out. What we're saying, and I told some of the members that we're not asking for Congress to come in and solve, what targeting calls should look like, or even the rankings of the CFP. But
Right.
on areas like this where young people are being abused, where contracts are not clear. I mean, AP right now, we require barbers to be registered.
Yes.
Barbers. And these agents don't have to be registered. And so the amount of abuse that's going on, we feel like the only way that that's going to get fixed, it cannot be fixed with the patchwork quilt. This is where congressional action needs to come into play. I do know there's some other topics of discussion on whether there should be a safe harbor for universities to be able to operate that would not expose them to antitrust litigation.
Yeah.
All those things are for some attorneys who have a much higher pay grade than I do. I do know this, our little sandbox, though, we're dealing with some agents that are not good actors. Some of them are really good, but we want to get the bad guys out and keep the good guys in.
As always, that's the case, right? Nothing's absolute in life, and that's why you have to legislate, right? I mean, there's no absolution in life. Craig, what do you think the timetable might be? I know that's beyond your control, maybe, but just something that you can express today.
I think the lion's share of the House settlement is being finalized. I mean, the last part was talking about roster limit of 105, and that's a really, really tough pill to swallow, but this is where we're at. But I do think you're going to see that come about in the 1st of July. Schools being able to compensate. And I also think you're going to see some semblance of a restructuring of an enforcement model that does attack some of the things that I just mentioned to you, more timely decisions, also with maybe a little bit more teeth, however that comes about. However this does, I do think that however the body is, whomever that body is, they need to have subpoena power. They need to be able to come in and hold some people's feet to the fire, because right now that's just not the case in a short term.
Right. Hey, Craig, we just have about 30 seconds. I just asked you for a quick yes or no if you could. I know it's a huge topic, but the American Football Coaches Association, do they broach the subject of Title IX at all? Are they looking at in conjunction with their sport?
Well, we all recognize Title IX comes into play, and we're for all the sports. And however that gets weaved through AP, that's a complex issue. But I also know this is a country, we put a man on the moon. College football is damn important. Everybody, let's take our institution hat off. Let's come to the table and get this thing done.
Hey, Craig, it was great. I really enjoyed our conversation, and maybe we'll have it again down the road. But thank you so much, Craig Bohl, Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association, for being a guest today on AP As We See It. Thank you so much, Greg. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, I'm AP Stedham for Greer's Markets. If you're planning a big party or for every day, shop at Greer's for delicious food, beverages, and snacks. Save time and money by checking on Greers.com and use Groceries to Go to get your Greer's groceries delivered. Look at the weekly ad for more information. 29 locations in Alabama, Florida, and Mississippi, serving the region since 1916. Remember, Greer's got it. They guarantee it.
And we're back with AP as we see it, and we want to thank our special guest, Executive Director of the American Football Coaches Association, Craig Bohl. We had a chance to delve in those important subjects, the NIL and agents and enforcement. And of course, this is the transfer season with that 10-day spring window, April 16th, 10 days from there. So we wanted to let people know about a couple of interesting transfers in the SEC. And we know that you, as I mentioned before, you cannot transfer within the conference. You only have that one opportunity in the SEC. That's their rule. And during the wintertime, that window, that transfer portal window. But a couple of interesting transfers we wanted to discuss was Lane Kiffin of Ole Miss. He's bringing in the Ferris State Division II championship quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. And he had 26 TDs and 6 interceptions, 61%, 2,925 yards. He rushed for 1,019 yards and 25 TDs as well. So that's an interesting choice. And we always use this phrase, they're driving by graveyards looking for a quarterback. So Lane Kiffin, he scoured the countryside and he came up with this Division II championship quarterback, Trinidad Chambliss. So that's big news for Ole Miss because they have the quarterbacks on campus, Austin Simmons, Pierce Clarkson, the transfer from Louisville, and also A.J. Maddox is the redshirt freshman. So they have 4 quarterbacks vying for that position. So that should be a heated battle. But I don't think that quarterback transfers in as a Division II championship quarterback and expects to sit on the pine. So Ole Miss, maybe they made their selection with this transfer from Ferris State, Trinidad Chambliss. Another interesting player that transferred into the conference from the University of California, Jaden Ott. He's a sensational running back. I saw him play twice. I saw him play in Berkeley against Auburn, and I saw him come to Auburn, and they defeated Auburn on the Plains. But he had an interesting career so far. He was injured last year quite a bit. His first season as a freshman, 897 yards. As a sophomore, 1,315. Last year, way below his expectation at 385 yards. But he averaged a couple of seasons, 5+ yards a carry. Last year, just 3.3. But he's a good football player, about 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, 24 TDs rushing. But an interesting fact about him, he had 95 receptions and 736 yards, 6 TDs through the air. So he's very versatile, and he fits into Oklahoma's offensive scheme. They're bringing in the Washington State offensive coordinator with that quarterback as well, transferring. So Oklahoma looking to upgrade offensively. They struggled at times, and I think that Jaden Ott, he can put up some big numbers at Oklahoma because he's going to have the stage and every opportunity to produce as he did those first 2 seasons. He has, like I say, 2,597 yards right now in 3 seasons. But I think that was a huge pickup for the Sooners. And I think those folks will really enjoy his style of play if he could stay healthy, if he could stay away from injury, free from injury. But anyway, in the transfer portal era, the big news was Nico Iamaleava, the Tennessee quarterback. He's decided to test the market, and he separated himself from the University of Tennessee. Josh Heupel made that announcement recently, and I think that was a strong move by Tennessee to tell players, look, we want you to be involved with the NIL. We're willing to pay, as everybody is around the country, but there's a limit. And I always tell people, when you turn your sport into a profession, like always, who's evaluating your talent, and then who should receive the money and how much? I'll give you an example. Quinshon Judkins, the 2-time All-SEC running back. He went to Ohio State. He was looking for more money. I think he was seeking about $1.5 million. Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin denied to pay him that amount of money. He went to Ohio State. I don't think he received that. I mean, that's what I've heard. But just because you're going to another school and you're making these demands, you might end up with less money. But things worked out for him. He's entering the NFL draft, 2025 NFL draft, which will be in Green Bay, and we're going to be there. And I want you to look for all our interviews on our YouTube channel at AP As We See It. But Quinshon Judkins, he ended up playing up there for less money, as I understand. So Nico Iamaleava, He's looking for more money. I'm not sure the market's going to be there for him, but he can't transfer to any SEC school. I think maybe it was a misstep. He probably could have gotten maybe his price possibly in the SEC if he transferred in that winter portal, but that's gone with the wind. And so he's going to have to make his decision based on the marketplace. And there's 134 schools, I believe, playing at the FBS level. As I said, they're always looking for quarterbacks. He's very talented, athletic, but I question if he has the accuracy to be a dominant force. He's going to make some plays for you, no question. But we saw last year their open receiver, especially watching the Alabama game, was able to cover that particular game. He missed players that they could have scored easy touchdowns. So I think that Nico, he has to improve in certain areas. Accuracy is one. In command of the offense, he's going to have to learn a new offense under a new coordinator, new coach, new wide receivers, and he doesn't have the springtime to rely on with that repetitiveness and that experience bonding with his teammates. So, but it could happen. It could happen for him in the right place. But I just think that Tennessee stood their ground and they made an evaluation. He was worth X amount of money, and we're not going beyond that budget because we want to have good players all around. If you give all your money to your quarterback, as we learned in the pros, maybe your offensive line is not as good, and your quarterback's getting sacked. So you paid your quarterback a lot of money, and the offensive line can't hold out the defensive line. Your quarterback's trying to throw from his backside. It doesn't jive. So Tennessee, we give them credit for making the determination. Whether they're right or wrong, they're willing to live with that decision moving forward. So the NIL, the transfer portal, we had Greg Bohl on, the AFCA executive director. He mentioned all these subjects that we're discussing, the NIL and the enforcement authority they're trying to negotiate and legislate, and also the agents trying to come up with some mandatory standards and also capping the percentage for each agent, because we know that even though you have representation, sometimes it's not all good, as we find out in the pros, and that seeps down to the collegiate level as well in all the sports, football included. But anyway, so one of the people that really got this whole thing rolling to pay players was somebody by the name of Sonny Vaccaro. And Sonny's a friend of ours, friend of the show. And Sonny Vaccaro, he has a new book out. I'd like to put it up to the screen so you can see it. Sonny Vaccaro's new book, you can get it on all the bookstores and order it online, but it's a tremendous read, Legends and Souls. And Sonny was a brilliant marketer. He was the P.T. Barnum of basketball. He started all that grassroots run around the country with, and he was the one to come up with the idea of paying coaches to have their teams wear the shoe brand. And he came up with that famous deal to sign Michael Jordan. You could watch that in the movie Air. But Sonny Vaccaro, an interesting character. He's an American original. And I just want to highly suggest you purchase that book because he was the genesis of paying the players. He sought out an individual who would be willing to go to court, and that ended up being Ed O'Banion. Ed O'Banion from the UCLA basketball team. The UCLA team, they won the 1995 championship in Seattle. I was there for the Final Four. They beat Arkansas that year. It was Arkansas, North Carolina, Oklahoma State. Those are the four teams that made the Final Four. But Ed O'Banion, they won that suit, and it's part of that House decision that's coming out now with the students. But they were trying to, there was name, image, and likeness involved in the video games being played at that time. And so he sued. And now you see all these players being paid. But I just like to give tribute to Sonny Vaccaro because you wouldn't have all this happening with the marketing of athletes and being paid if you didn't have Sonny Vaccaro. He was from near Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he revolutionized marketing and branding. I mean, he was sensational. There's no one I ever met that knew how to promote things like Sonny did. And he was he was always in favor of the players, and he had his battles with people. But it's a tremendous read to find out all the people he met through the years. And like I said, I really love Sonny, but he had his confrontations with people along the way, especially the NCAA. But in the end, the reason these players are getting paid, they can pay tribute if they really want to. And Sonny Vaccaro, he was the mastermind behind getting players played. But anyway, we want to thank our guest this week, Craig Bohl of the American Football Coaches Association, Executive Director. And we look forward to you checking us out on our personal pages at AP as we see it, and at AP Stedham, our social media platform. So we'll be back next week with another episode of AP as we see it. Thank you.